assess the overall program, the impact on borrowers, some of the experiences here and there, and then to also assess the credit impact score to see how people have moved and brought quality, but how their credit score has improved. So basically, these 5 sub questions will address those 2 overarching questions. And we've captured our deliverables into 2 categories. One, the analysis portion assesses the program outcomes, looking at success in achieving the program outcomes, and also the gaps between achieved and expected outcome or results. So lastly, we're going to be providing detailed recommendation in how the program can be refined and how you can use the report for future references. At this stage, I will turn over to my colleague.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Just for your edification, Lawrence is our Chief of Community Outreach, and so he has extensive experience in working with community partners such as yourself and the aims of Ways to Work. Before I turn it over to our Chief Economist, Silje and Melissa, I'll go over our logic model here just to explain to you how we've developed, or how we would propose to develop an examination and evaluation of your program, which has been running since 1984 fairly smoothly. And so we understand that the resources that you already have are your loan capacity support through the national structure, which then filters down into the local staff, and the marketing, committee management, the case management that's done by your local staffers within the 44 sites across the United States that Ways to Work currently services. That would translate then over to the activities. That's at the national level, the funding support, the architecture for IT, the underwriting, the loan origination services, as well as raising the actual funds that then filters down into the local level in which they will conduct the intake assessments, the financial and credit history background by the local case officers, the financial literacy education, as well as the collection of the full loan amount. The unfortunate incident that someone is not able to pay the loan, then also repossession of the vehicle. The outputs would be, of course, the numbers of loans that we would measure through to the Ways to Work clients, the number of participants within the financial literacy classes, the hopefully the increase, but not necessarily, in some cases there may be a decrease in retention for those who have current jobs and ensuring that they're staying with those employers. And also, again, we look to measure the transportation time itself. We see that in reducing that, it allows for less work absences, less tardiness, which overall will help us to reach the strategic objectives of this program and of our clients. That is removing the barriers to employment, the financial literacy, which then would translate into job skills, the increased income for the participants, which would then also raise their credit worthiness, which then also translates into better child care that they can provide, access to extracurricular activities for both themselves as well as their children, hopefully then leading to the economic stability for participating households, thereby reducing their dependence on public assistance programs for those at-risk communities that we are targeting within this program, and then also the economic stimulation to these underserved populations. Again, giving them greater access to traditional markets that they were previously barred from. We understand your stakeholders. We understand that you have your potential investors who consistently are looking at the outcomes of this program, looking towards the impact that it has in those local communities. We recognize that while they may have low power and low interest, we do understand that they will have an eye towards the evaluation once these results and findings are published. We understand your subjects, your borrowers. We're the ones who are obviously the highest point in interest in looking to see what happens within this study. We understand your players, your national management, and your loan coordinators at the local level, who also have great stakes as well as also great interest in this evaluation, will probably be our key players in looking towards implementing some of the findings that we find here in order to refine those best practices that we dig out of this evaluation. And then lastly, your contact setters. We know that you must recognize your current funders who want to understand the money that they're putting towards this program is being put continually to good use. Okay, and technology shall fail. Okay. Interesting. There we go. All right. So with that I'll turn it over to our chief economist, or one of our chief economists, Mr. Mash Jensen.
All right, thank you, Melissa. So against this background, I'll turn to the evaluation design. We propose to answer the evaluation questions through two studies: a program outcome study and a credit impact study. The outcome study will mainly be based on a qualitative analysis, which I'll go through in a moment, and the credit impact study will be based on a quantitative analysis that Silje will outline later. Note that there is an overlap between the qualitative and the quantitative analysis. Specifically, the survey data that we intend to collect will be used in quantitative analysis, both in the outcome study and in the credit impact study. Slide, please. So the program outcome study seeks to provide answers to the three evaluation questions that Lawrence went over earlier. 1, outcomes for participants. 2, the link between activities and outcomes. And 3, how the program works to attain expected outcomes. To do this, we intend to survey loan coordinators at each of the active local sites, that is, those who have originated loans within the last 3 years, as well as the program participants, i.e. the borrowers, in the last 3 years. And we'll primarily be using enumerative methods, which will allow us to A, summarize the data that we collect in discrete categories, and B, to display and analyze the data using quantitative methods. The exact design of the survey will be based on the logic model that Melissa outlined and discussions with stakeholders. This approach will give us a good idea about how the program works, and if it works well, why this is so. Slide, please. So methodology and data collection. As mentioned, there are two groups of stakeholders that we intend to survey: the loan coordinators and the borrowers. For the loan officers, some of the relevant themes of the survey would be: where in the process is time invested, what factors determine whether to make a loan, and what measures are taken to ensure loan payments. So let's look at the first theme. Here, local sites will be asked about the percentage of time they spend on various aspects of the loan application process. And with predefined categories, the survey may show that on average, local sites spend about 20%, say, of their time on screening and 15% on processing loan applications. This will give us a good understanding of where in the process loan coordinators are investing their time. Now, for the borrowers, relevant themes would be their characteristics, whether a car has actually been useful or helpful to the situation, and whether the program has increased their financial situation. And if we look at the second theme, for example, we can obtain information on whether the program has improved borrowers' job situation, lessened their reliance on public assistance, allowed them to take their kids to after-school activities, and so on. And this will provide us with useful information on the overall improvements in the participants' quality of life. Slide, please. So, as should be obvious from the previous slide, we'll obtain a lot of useful data on program outcomes from the survey, which will be valuable in and of itself. It'll allow us to see the impact of the program, i.e. the independent variable, and on outcomes, i.e. the dependent variable. But the enumerative approach also allows us to conduct two quantitative analysis for the outcome study. First, we can make a comparison to the 2006 evaluation to get insights on developments in the program since then. Second, we can use the survey data to define a successful borrower. So this could, for example, be a borrower who has increased his or her salary by at least 10%, or stopped receiving public assistance, or whatever might be of interest. And we can then identify the local sites that have a higher proportion of successful participants and try to uncover what kind of activities and services that they provide. And this will help us establish a better link between activities and outcomes and understand best practices. And with that, I'll turn it over to Silje.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk about the credit impact study, which is the quantitative part. And what I think makes it really interesting to work with you is that you've already done this before. You have great data collection, you've shown great results, and you know what you want. So we're not going to change a lot of the methodology that you've used before, but we want to add a couple of parts that we think would be interesting to you, because we've noted in the RFP that you are interested in understanding how the recession impacted your clients, and you're interested in fine-tuning your program. So we've added a couple of tools. I think we'll do that. We're proposing both a longitudinal study and a randomized control trial. I'll come back to both of them. Just want to say that both of these are established scientific approaches with produced data with validity and reliability that you can present. Those are facts that are easy to communicate to stakeholders and in between yourselves when you're having discussions on what's working and how it's working. Next slide, please. So the longitudinal study, basically the same as you've done before. We want to randomly select 400 people from each of 4 different cohorts. We want to get 2 that were before the recession, so from 2003 and 2006, and then 2 after. And we'll use software to create matched pairs for those. Draw people from the databases from the credit rating agency that you're using. So for each person that has gotten a loan, say in 2003, there will be a pair in the comparison group that got a loan at the same year with a comparable baseline credit score that is approximately the same age, approximately the same, lives in the same area and has approximately the same education level. To make sure that the groups that we're comparing are as similar as possible. We want to avoid bias. We want to be sure that anybody who looks at this can say, yes, your clients are doing great because they participated in your program. We don't want them to come and say, no, you just compared them to somebody that's not really relevant. So that's a very, very important part of this. Then we want to do an analysis. We will look at their credit, the development in their credit score. We will look at their default rates. And we'll compare them at certain points of time. And for the 2 elder cohorts, we'll be able to follow them from 2003 and 6 and through the whole recession. And I think we'll be able to find some very interesting data on that. And I think if you can show your stakeholders the impact that you've had during that time, I think that's a real value for you. So then slide again, please. Then there's the randomized control trial that we're also proposing that you do. You say you want to fine-tune your program and you want to listen, you want to learn more about it and look at the activities. So when you're doing a comparison group trial, you can never completely avoid bias. There will always be some difference between the groups you're comparing. So if you want to make sure that what you're looking at is causality, you're going to say we can prove that our programs work and this is how they work. What you want to do, the gold standard, is the randomized control trial. You are in control, so you make sure that the treatments that you propose are assigned randomly. That's why you avoid bias. So we want to select 400 people who are at the point of entering your program and divide them into 4 groups which will receive different independent variables that will receive different treatments. The first group, which I think you would probably be a little bit nervous about, will only receive the car loan. No other assistance from you. That's to establish a baseline. That's to establish if the loan on itself is what's having an impact or which activities are the ones that are having an impact. And you would have one group that received the full program, and then there would be 2 other groups that would receive parts of your program. And what we want to see is, are those parts significant? In what way do those parts impact the credit results? So So by comparing these 4 different groups, you can kind of, you can tease out